I danced in the morning when the world was begun, and I danced in the moon and the stars and the sun, and I came down from heaven, and I danced on the earth. At Bethlehem I had my birth. Dance then, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. I danced for the scribe and the Pharisee, but they would not dance and they would not follow me. I danced for the fishermen, for James and John, and they came to me and the dance went on. I danced on the Sabbath when I cured the lame. The holy people said it was a shame. They whipped and they stripped and they hung me high, and they left me there on a cross to die. I danced on a Friday and the sky turned black. It's hard to dance with the devil on your back. They buried my body and they thought I'd gone, but I am the dance, and the dance still goes on. Dance then, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. Well, they cut me down and I leapt up high. I am the life that'll never, never die. I'll live in you if you'll live in me. I am the Lord of the dance, said he. Dance then wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. Lord of the Dance by Sidney B. Carter, 1963.
Kingdoms rise and empires crumble, and the knowledge and wisdom from past ages are lost to the foggy ruins of time. But for genuine seekers of truth, one place stands alone on a hill. Shining brightly in the darkness, you, dear listener, have reached the Hidden Citadel.
We are here today to continue what we started in the last week's episode on the Nazis and the occult. So this is part 2 of the Nazis and the occult, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as you enjoyed the last one. A quick recap. We were, at the end of the last episode, we were talking about Chuck Norris and how, because he lives a very disciplined life, he was able to become 80 years old and still being healthy and in good shape. And then we compared that to Miyamoto Musashi and how he talked about any art that you study, any art form that you study is actually going to lead you to a good place and have a good quality of life, when you look back on it. So that's where we're picking up in this episode. I'm going to give you a little taste of my Miyamoto Musashi argument, and then Greg's going to come back in with his take on it. He was able to get as much enlightenment, whatever he meant by that, as what he did when he was a swordsman. And so his idea was, when you follow an art, whether it be sword fighting or painting or music or any discipline like that, and you follow it to the end result is enlightenment. And I think in Chuck Norris's case, the end result is, you're 80 years old and you're still active and healthy. I don't really know.
He is the evidence.
Yeah, really. And I don't know
by himself.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, the idea of enlightenment in Zen Buddhism is different than, but I'm just going to term it as a good quality of life. If you focus on being the best at an art, you can't go wrong,
Yeah, it's interesting, though. All right, so going along those lines, it goes back to what we were saying about the Nazis, about Hollywood, about a lot of these things that deviate. This idea of enlightenment, this idea that you're trying to reach a level, that level does not become the end. It's not a cul-de-sac.
Right.
It ends up being something that you will then want more of.
Yeah.
Or it'll become entropic and start disintegrating, requiring you to keep putting effort into trying to be something that that is really unattainable because it's really an end game idea.
Yeah.
It's so interesting though. You go back to what you were saying before that we deviate so quickly, but you look at there was a simple relationship in the Garden of Eden, and it was a very simple. It probably wasn't easy, but it was a simple directive about being having a relationship with God and taking care of His creation, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
But Eve listened to something else, an alternative take on even God's twisting, just changing God's words just a little bit.
Yep.
It changed her thinking, but it's almost like she was almost looking for. She almost had a part of her that desired, and she's indicative of all of humanity, that there's a part that you have to. It takes, in a relationship is love, but it really takes discipline of sorts to maintain single-mindedness about something in our lives like God, and the discipline is to say forsaking all others, even if they're talking to you, even if they're opening the door, even if they're presenting something that appears to be greater than what, even if it's a path that seems to, I'm going to be enlightened, or I'm going to have power, I'm supernatural, I'm going to be rich, or whatever. No, because none of those are the path of life.
That's true.
So that means they are going to be destructive at some point.
Yeah, at some point they veer off to that. That's really the bottom line is, if you're not focusing on, drawing closer to God, you're drawing further away from everybody else. I think about Augustine, and he talked about the triangle idea where God is up here, and as you get closer to God, you get closer to other people. It's like that's the way that it works. But people that want to reject God, a lot of times they end up being lonely and miserable. Look at Crowley. At the end of his life, he walked back and forth, and they said he just kept saying over and over, "I don't understand. I don't understand." Because he was, riddled with STDs, and he was mindless at this point from all the drugs that he was taking, and he just thought that he was getting power, and all he got in the end was just, destruction.
Yeah, it's really such an interesting topic, because on one hand, talking about how the Nazis were constantly looking for something to add to what they already had in some way, and it could be psychological, it could be supernatural, it could be a lot of different things. But if you kind of squint, it applies to cults, Christianity, it applies to a lot of different areas, that if you're not disciplined to a simple understanding of what life is, you are going to divert very easily. You're going to open gateways to things that are harmful, and ultimately it's going to be distance and destruction.
Yeah, well, and in the end,
I love the pyramid idea, or the triangle
Augustine's
idea, because first of all, it's really taken from the first and second commandment, or the greatest commandment, because if you love the God, you love others, you love yourself, you're moving in that direction.
Yep.
So it kind of moves in that direction, but the more that you engage in those other things, the more you're actually separating yourself, destroying. You're not moving in a center direction. You're moving in a divergent direction. You're moving in a way that's disintegrating rather than integrating.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when you're relying on something other than God to guide you, you're opening up also the possibility of being lied to. It's like, if this other entity out there is able to communicate with you, if you're able to get information from it, what's to say that the information is true or false?
Right.
How do you verify that? If you're having a seance and you do contact a spirit, how do you, let's say it's the spirit of a human, that you want to get the information from this human. Well, if you went to any human in your life as it is and asked them information, they could straight up lie to you.
Right.
So now you're asking a dead human for information. How do you know they're not going to lie to you?
That is such a good point, because what you're thinking is, what I'm doing here is control, and I'm controlling the conversation that's happening. So I must be controlling the level of truth that's happening and the verifiability of it. And really, that's the deception. I think, like we talked about it last time, the tragical history of the life and death of Dr. John Faustus, when he's making the deal with Mephistopheles, and he's getting everything he wants from Mephistopheles, then he starts teasing him. Who made the heavens? And Mephistopheles is like, move me not. Don't make me mad here. We can play your games for as long as, but if you're going to insult me, I'm going to show you where the real power is. And guess what? It's not with you. Like, you're not controlling. You are, like you said, how often do we just, if we meet someone on the street we've never really met before, just says something to us, we're going to believe it without verifying it or anything like that? So something comes up that's supernatural, that has no basis in any sort of truth, says something. I mean, the first thing to do is, yep, I'll follow that.
The idea of you draw some sort of mystical circle on the ground and you can contain an entity within that circle when you call it forth.
Yep.
How do you know that it's not just playing with you and acting like, this circle is keeping me in, to you, you are an infant. It's like me playing with a baby and being like, oh, look, you got me. And it's like, it knows that it wants to destroy you. That's its end goal. That's what it's trying to get. So it's going to do whatever it takes to make you think that, you're in control. It's in control the entire time. The minute you step foot in there, it's in control.
There's no circle that's containing anything. What you're doing is you're creating a belief system in which you're saying, I'm giving myself over to this.
Yeah.
That's really all that's happening. Is you are opening it, you are submitting to something.
Yep.
You are not controlling it.
And that's why Crowley was confused, because he thought he was in control.
No,
he was never in control.
No.
Have you ever found yourself invited to an event and not really knowing what the right apparel was to wear? If you wear something that's a little too classy, like a suit or something, you might feel out of place if everybody else is casual. If you wear something too casual, you might look around and notice that everyone else is dressed up and say to yourself, I'm just not dressed up for this occasion. Well, here at the Hidden Citadel, we have the perfect solution to this problem. Why don't you go buy yourself a Hidden Citadel tee today, and you can wear it anywhere. It's perfect for every occasion. You can wear it to a casual meeting. You can wear it to a business dinner. You could even wear it to a formal event such as a wedding or a funeral. All of these places and more are appropriate to wear a Hidden Citadel tee. And what's even more wonderful than just wearing the Hidden Citadel tee is you'll be supporting the work that we're doing here at the Hidden Citadel. So why don't you do yourself a favor and go buy yourself a Hidden Citadel t-shirt today. The link is down below in the description. Have a great day. He was never in control.
No, you're looking at it going, I made the circle. Things like, you made the circle to show me that you are ready to be taken over.
Exactly. That's exactly
the circle's doing nothing for me. It's a circle.
It's just a symbol saying, okay, I'm an idiot. Come and mess with me.
You've done the work to show me that you're willing to give over your pathetic existence to me.
Yep, that's exactly what. It's just like putting up a sign. And that's where it becomes like when you dabble in the things like tarot cards and going to psychics.
Yeah.
I don't think 98% of psychics are bothered by the spiritual realm. And the reason why is because they want the false information out there. It's like the CIA with their, what do they call it? The disinformation campaigns, where it's like, oh yeah, we don't want to take that guy out because he's spreading all sorts of lies that work in our favor.
Yeah.
And so all these people who are psychics, they're probably, some of them, they probably are possessed or messed with or oppressed or whatever. I'm not going to say all of them, but I think a large percentage of them are just phonies. And they're fooling themselves as much as they're fooling other people. So it's not like they're necessarily, some of them are not necessarily trying to fool you, because they're just as fooled themselves. Some of them are straight up trying to fool you, and they just want your money. But what you're doing by going and messing with those people is you're basically hanging up a sign for real demons to say, oh, there's a target. We can go mess with that person.
Yeah.
Because they're open to all this kind of stuff. This is the same idea of opening your third eye. All your third eye is a doorway into your brain to let demonic activity in.
Well, but again, when you diverge from the straight path, the divergence can be, like we're talking about, like astrology and psychics and stuff, where that divergence is demonic. There's also the divergence where, even if God gives spiritual gifts, if you're not using them, or if you think you're controlling them, or
right.
they're almost like a badge. Hey, look,
I got this
a master's degree in healing, so I'll heal you at my whim. That's the same idea where you're using something destructively, which is meant to be.
That's why whenever people have ever asked me for healing or like a prayer or whatever, I'm always like, well, let's ask. He's our Father. Let's ask him. Maybe he'll be kind and take this pain away from you. I mean, it's my job to ask him, but I'm not the one doing anything other than we're just being obedient together and asking him. I remember one time, Audrey, your wife, she came over when we lived in Highland Falls, and she had her neck was hurting. And she was like, can you guys pray for me? And we just gathered around and prayed, and God touched her and healed her neck. That's one of many people that I've seen over and over and over that God healed. But I don't ever go around and say, oh, I've got a gift of healing. I don't think I do have a gift of healing. What I've got is, I just know where the healing comes from. It's kind of like I know that in my refrigerator there's a button that when I push it, water comes out. I don't really understand the mechanism that makes it work. I just know that if I do it, I'm going to get some water. And it's the same thing with healing. I don't understand people that have the gift of healing, and I'm sure maybe there are people that have it, and I'm not discounting that. What I'm saying is I don't have it, but I do have obedience, and I know if I go and we both seek the Lord, he's such a good God that there's a good chance that he might heal it. And the thing goes the same thing for other things. Like we were talking earlier about these people that were upset with me this week. I can still go to the Father and ask him, please heal this for me. And maybe on any of our parts we were, misunderstanding each other or something, and potentially could just fall and crash and burn and never have the kind of fellowship that we had before. Or you have the power, if I put it in your hand and ask you to fix it, you have the power to fix it, I've had misunderstandings with people before. One time somebody shoved a 12-gauge shotgun in my face and threatened to shoot me. And I was like, well, today is not the day that this relationship is going to be fixed. But in the due course of time, God even healed that relationship. And it's like, it doesn't matter what it is, give it to God, like planting a seed. That's why the Bible over and over and over refers to planting. You plant it, you water it, you let it grow. And then see if the fruit comes from it.
Is this the shotgun one the same one where Gideon goes, does this mean we're not getting donuts?
I think so, yes. Yeah, that was the one.
You're being shot at. Yeah. You're being shot at behind a car. You're like...
No, I wasn't.
Your son goes, wait, does this mean we're not getting donuts?
That wasn't behind the car. It was right in my face. And I walked right up because I was like, this is a 12 gauge, and if it goes off, my kids are back here. It could spread. So I walked right up and got right in front of it so that way, But that wasn't the only time. The other time where it was behind the car was I went up and knocked on this guy's door to invite him to church, and he had his shotgun and threatened me, if you don't get off my porch, this was in Texas where a threat like that actually means something. You don't get off my porch, I'm going to shoot you. And we're like, okay, have a good day. We went and got behind the car, But yeah, it was, these things have happened to me before.
The Gideon thing reminds me of like Monty Python.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. We're not getting donuts.
Wait a minute. Does this mean we're not getting donuts?
One time when we were in New York, Liam and I were coming through Newburgh, and man, I'm telling you, I don't know why the Orange County Choppers wanted to stay there and have their but it's like, it was Halloween. We were going up there to Fishkill to play at Pastor Bob's church, and there was machine guns and all sorts of stuff going off while people were shooting at each other. Yeah, so it's like, these are the things where, and the sad thing, maybe we talked about this a minute ago, but the sad thing about Himmler, it was the same story with Crowley, is, they catch him, all of his ideas of, I'm going to have all this power evaporates, and he bites down on his poison capsule and dies. And it's like, really, that's the ultimate trajectory of any of this occult stuff. And really, when it came down to it, half the things that they were looking for they never found because they weren't real. I mean, I don't even know how I feel about the Holy Grail. I mean, I imagine there was a cup that Jesus drank out of, but did anybody save it? I mean, these guys were kind of in fear of their lives there. Why would they be carrying around things to encumber them when they might have to flee at a moment's notice?
It's interesting because when I think of those things, kind of the relics of throughout Scripture. I mean, definitely the Ark is definitely. I mean, there's something. There's this distinct. It did have its own power to it. I like what what Heiser says about it, though, that it was like kind of unto itself at that time important, because that was where where God's presence was. But after they had the tabernacle, after they moved into his presence wasn't a part of that anymore.
Right.
It was a part of something else. But even still, it was a distinct relic. Like the Grail. It's almost an invention of fictional mysticism.
I think so.
Like it's kind of like, well, you think, all right, there had to have been a cup, yeah. There had to have been a shroud.
I do think the Shroud of Turin is real. I've done a lot of research on that, and I think.
Well, then you also the spear.
Yeah,
but it was just kind of its own. It was kind of just mentioned, like there was nothing really distinct about it.
Yeah.
What I was thinking though? I was thinking about even just it's a podcast for the future. Is that are there places throughout Scripture, places that things have taken place, in which they end up being like portals.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you could find that place, like because and the reason why I'm saying is because the Garden of Eden is guarded. It's a place.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's supernaturally guarded by two things. Or maybe more because it's cherubim.
Yeah.
So it's
plural.
And then it's not one. And then there's a flashing sword that's in front of that.
Well, here's a little thing to throw at you. Cherubim or beam has multiple faces. Is it plural because the entity is multiple bodied, or are there multiple beings contained within that one individual thing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting thing to think about.
It is, yeah. But I think it's funny. There's this thing I think it's in Austria. It's called Heidentor, and it's like Heidentor, and they call it the Pagan's Gate, and it's this structure, and I think what it was is almost like thought to have been something that if you pass through, you go into somewhere else. Now, and then in the attraction of mysticism, I think we're all like, we get attracted to it. We have to kind of suspend our disbelief and go, all right, yeah, but that's a good story, but it's not in the Bible. The Bible does have some places like where Philip is whisked away.
That's
He's
true.
essentially teleported.
Yep.
Yeah, Enoch.
Yep.
You have things that
Elijah.
happen where Elijah, you're in one place and you're in another. You know,
Even Moses' body.
Moses' body. But it's just like is it the spot itself, or was it just the action of God? I mean, I think what we would probably agree is the action of God. But in this, the curiosities about how there is also value to the various places on earth, i.e., Jerusalem, Mount Hermon, you know, the places that are very important to God. Like, it's not just the concept of it. There's a definite there's a territory to it. There's a boundary. There's a geographical value of sorts. I saw this one guy that said that from space, there's only two places that actually stick out if you're looking from space at the Earth. One of them is Israel, and because it's so green, which is life,
against
compared
the
to everything
desert,
around it.
yeah.
And I forgot what the other one is. The other place is like
probably the Eye of Sahara, or the
maybe
the Mauritania, what they think might be Atlantis.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just so it's almost like I wonder if there's
the other thing too
places.
is even if some of these things were saved, like say the True Cross.
Yeah.
There's no way they went and got much of the True Cross, because those Romans were like, no, we got another crucifixion in an hour. We need this wood. Because you're in a desert environment. You know, they're going to reuse it. So it's like, to get pieces of the True Cross, that's probably something that isn't really going to exist. The Crown of Thorns, you might get a thorn from the same kind of bush, but that's going to rot down over time because it's plant material. I do think in all my studying that the Shroud of Turin probably is legit, and possibly even the face covering that's in a different location. Those have been tested, and the original tests were only done on repaired sections. When they went back and they tested the non-repaired sections, the actual original parts, what they found was it dated right back to the time of Jesus. You know, so that's something that I think, maybe Mary, would have kept that, and when she died, it might have got passed on to the church or something. And I mean, I can definitely see certain things being saved, but like Thor's hammer, we don't even know if Thor was a real person.
I know.
So it's like, why are you looking for it? When you're talking about the emerald tablets of, was it Hermes?
Thoth?
Thoth. Yeah, who is also called Hermes Trismegistus. You're talking about something that's hypothetical. I mean, yes, there's a text called that somebody made in the Middle Ages, but I mean, but I guess if you're a scientist and they say, look, you can either go to Auschwitz or you can come and work for us, a lot of these guys were like, oh, I'll come and work for you, and I don't really care. I just don't want to go to the prison camp, and I'll just tell you what you want to hear about this stuff. I'm sure these guys lied to Himmler all day long about, oh yeah, we're making great progress. We think it's over here, Well,
I think you're always trying to look. I mean, again, that adaptation level phenomenon where there's the next margin above that you grow into, because to stay static has a almost a feeling of deterioration or disinterest, where you're just like, this is not as exciting. I got to find something more to either give me power or define my life or whatever it is. Like, but I like the stuff that Heiser talks about, that a lot of when he talks the Bible's it's for us but not to us. So it's like, a lot of the really bizarre things that you see in the Old Testament, if you were to if there was an internet at the time and you were to do a Google search, you go, all right, Moses just said this, but this is what the Babylonians are saying over here, and this is what these guys are saying over here. That's why he said it, because they were claiming this and this and this over here, and he's like, and his words were just destroying them.
Yeah.
Because their belief system, their gods, their whatever it was, were kind of filling the earth with lies.
Yeah.
And what Moses was saying was to them, but for us.
Well, I think I was listening to a guy, he is a Christian, I don't remember his channel, but he was talking about the Baal stories, the Epic of Baal or something, and he was like, let's read this and talk about comparing it to what Isaiah and different prophets said. And so he's telling the story about how they tried to make Baal look out to be the most powerful god they should be worshiping. And what's interesting is different myths, they all sound like the same. Like when you look at the Akkadian version or the Canaanite version or the Babylonian version, they're all essentially the same story with just different character names. And I think if you go back to Nimrod and you see, oh yeah, maybe this was a real person. Maybe this is something that he really did, and it was an event that happened. Like, there's always a slaying of some kind of sea monster,
Yep.
And of course we have the Leviathan, but then you have also the idea that, well, maybe the Milky Way is a representation of Leviathan, and maybe they're looking at these zodiac signs, and they're trying to come up with a good story to help remember them all. And in a time period where astronomy was really important for planting crops, I could understand why you would come up with stories like that to help pass on so that people could remember them. They're not necessarily a completely literate culture.
Correct.
So it's kind of like the idea that myths would develop as a teaching tool. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then later it became, I could be wrong about this, but stories are always a teaching tool,
Yeah, parables.
Yeah.
Jesus said I use parables so they understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier,
Yeah, and even in Jesus'
to follow the logic. Yeah.
Jesus' time was a very literate time period. A lot of people read, but he still used the parables because it's a good method to teach by.
Actually, I'm convinced that. Well, I'm not convinced. I feel like what was going on in the parables. I think that I don't think Jesus spoke fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was telling a story to the people to help to give an analogy, but since he didn't speak fiction, he was speaking the truth about somebody there.
My grandfather believed that too.
And so, because Jesus did not, I mean, why would he? Like, everything he spoke. So he's talking about something that's going on, and it's almost like it reminds me of like the disciples on the boat. They're experiencing something real. Jesus is asleep.
Yep.
It's not that the two things coexisted.
Yeah.
In this, so like in other words, he was disconnected from it. They were connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus in the garden was completely connected, and they were asleep.
Yep.
Because he was connected. Like, it was something that he experienced very personally, but they, in the same time, having the same being around him, did not experience the same thing he did.
True.
I think that happens with the parables as well. He's speaking about something that for somebody there is very connected to them. These guys were not.
Yeah.
But they were in the same. They were experienced. They were in the same, holding the same space, in the same time, with the same significant things going on.
Yeah, and he could have talked in fables, but he didn't.
Yeah.
He said, no, I'm going to tell the story. I think like the guy, I was preaching somewhere, I forget where it was, but I got called to this church, and I was talking about Jesus saying, it's better to cut off your hand, than to enter the kingdom of heaven without a hand than it is to And then he talks about how it's better, you sell everything you have and follow me. And I said, a lot of people look at these things like, oh, this is just a metaphor that's Jesus is saying. And I said, I don't think we give enough thought to the fact that maybe Jesus wasn't being metaphorical. He created hell. So if he's telling you, man, you'd be better off if you didn't have an arm than to go into hell. You don't want to go there. I'm trying to let you know that you're better off without your arm. And when I got done preaching, one of the deacons got up and he's like, well, thank you for coming today. He's like, well, we know all those passages were parables. They weren't literal. And I was like, dude, you completely and utterly missed the point of what I was trying to say today.
Yeah.
It's like you could give a parable about, a horrible event. You could say Timmy rode his bike out into traffic and got hit by a car, this little kid named Timmy, and you don't want to do that, Bobby, because it would be really bad for you to get hit by a car. And yet you might not be talking about some actual little kid named Timmy, but that you remember, there was a kid when I was, in school that ran his bike out and got hit by a car. It's one of those things. And so it's kind of like that could be what Jesus was doing. Or the other thing could be like when Jesus was writing in the sand and you who cast the first stone, or you who are without sin cast the first stone. The idea that a lot of people say is perhaps he was writing down the sins of those individuals. And it's like, well, if he was teaching a parable, and the lady who was at the well who said he told me everything about my life, and it's like, well, we only have a little bit of that conversation. It didn't sound like he told everything about her life, but there could be more to it. And the other thing is, it could be the way that he said it struck right to the heart of what her issue was that she was dealing with.
Yeah. The whole idea that I was thinking Jesus is speaking to someone specific, but speaking in a way that there's a greater understanding. There's various ways of even looking at Scripture in that way. That you see the event itself, and then you see the learning, the hermeneutic or the heuristic from it.
Well,
that sort of thing.
Give you an example. One of my students, we were recording "Come Thou Fount," and we were on the last. She's like, I really want to make sure we get the last verse in, and it's about prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave. She's like, because that's me. And I was like, yeah, that's me too. And Trevor was in the air. She's like, yeah, that's me too. It's like we all feel that way, and but it's the truth. And that's why C.S. Lewis talks a lot about how truth is what makes a writer, And if you're writing the truth, even if you're writing a myth, it can be the truth. And that's why he called Christianity the true myth, because it was mythic in its proportions. It seems like, oh, that's insane, that can't be true, and yet it is. And there's a guy I really like, his name's Gary Wayne, and Gary Wayne is an interesting guy, good researcher,
like
but he hates Tolkien and Lewis, and he hates them because he's like, well, they were Rosicrucians. No, they weren't. There's no evidence of that at all. And then he's like, and they talk about the true myth. They're just saying that Christianity, they like to use that word myth because it makes you think that Christianity, oh, maybe it is a myth. And it's like, dude, you're barking up the wrong tree there.
You're missing it.
You really missed out on it. And then the other part of it was they like Wayne and the people that he quotes, they like to quote C.S. Lewis before he was a Christian about paganism. And they bring up all these quotes about C.S. Lewis and pagan thought, and they're like, see, this is what he wrote. Yeah, he wrote it. He wrote it when he was an atheist.
Way different. Right.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah, that's like saying like Lee Strobel. Same thing. I mean, you quote him all kinds of stuff beforehand.
You can go look at his early articles from when he wasn't a Christian and compare those to after he was a Christian. They're going to be different. Russell Brand. The guy just became a Christian
Wow,
recently.
I know. That's wild.
Yeah, well,
Listening to him.
I haven't listened to him enough yet to see a massive impact in his life. It seems like there is, but I bet you in the next 10 years, you're going to see somebody quoting the Bible and giving exegesis like nobody else, because obviously that's his gifting, is study.
You see, yeah, it's funny. You and I have talked about this before. That, I mean, I feel like Jordan Peterson is also
him too. Yeah.
But you almost okay. I think we've talked about this before. We're way off topic here.
It doesn't matter anyway, because we're going to split this in half and make it 2 episodes.
All right, good. Here's the thing. I think we're all built to do something, and it does tie in because it says we have a purpose, and in the Eden event there is a purpose, and when you veer from that purpose, you are not on the part of cosmos, you are the part of chaos.
Yep.
You are not on the part of life, you're a part of death. Yep. You're not on the part of obedience, you're on part of rebellion and ultimately destruction. So, but I think you see these people that are just gifted in certain ways, and you see like a really good used car dealer is so deceptive, so slick.
Mm-hmm.
They even look the part, But you think, wow, if you weren't a car dealer and you were on fire for Christ, that you could go and figure out how to get somebody to understand your thinking in such a way to get them to essentially sell Christianity to them.
Yep.
You would be excellent.
Yeah.
So in other words, what I'm getting at is even musicians. Wow, an excellent musician. Imagine if you were writing hymns.
I know.
Imagine if you were
what would have been like if Jimi Hendrix had written gospel music.
Yeah.
Would have been amazing.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. A single wretch like me. Yeah, I always wanted to do that.
Yeah,
I always wanted to take. You take Amazing Grace and do it like the Gilligan's Island. And all that stuff. I always wanted to do it to Purple Haze.
That would be good.
So it's like Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound.
I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they had the original lyrics, and the original lyrics was Purple Haze, Jesus Saves. And I was like, what?
Is it really?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. I was like, that's pretty amazing.
So anyway, but I feel like if we're doing obedient and submissive, following what we're supposed to be doing, with God as the center and the Holy Spirit guiding us, we are matching what we're created to do with what is going to be the ultimate good result.
Yeah, and I think
if we're doing something using our gifts in any other way, it's chaos.
Yeah,
it's destruction. It's rebellion.
Yep. Well, and I think
it's not going to be good. But you see them. It's distinct. You see with everybody. You kind of can look at someone and go, wow. If you were to use that, essentially, if you use that for good, you know what I mean? So there are people who are just so good at speaking, so good at singing, so good at all kinds of these things, but they're using them. They're either not using them, which taking for granted, which we see in the Old Testament is a slap in God's face, or they're using it for themselves or for their own kind of gain. You can see they stick out in their ability, but you see that their destination is not a good one.
That's true. One of the things that I was thinking of when you were talking about that, to go back to C.S. Lewis, is he talked about oh crud, I just lost my train of thought.
Because I was thinking like Russell Brand. I mean, when you see him, even when he was speaking blasphemously, whatever, he had a charisma to him.
Yeah.
And he had this. He attracted. He's not even that great of a comedian.
No.
And he hasn't been in that many movies or anything like that.
He's just goofy, and that's what was good about him.
Right, but he had a natural charisma that whatever he's doing, even if he hadn't been in anything worthwhile, you just kind of like will go, what is this?
Yeah. It's true.
It's like a skunk's tail.
And the thing is, in the church, one of the things that really is an issue, or it used to be, maybe it still is like, I remember one time I was talking to a district superintendent, and he was like, I want you to go to this certain training program, because this training program is awesome, and you can go and lead all these people to Christ by going through this training program. And I'm like, yeah, that would never work for me. I can't sit there. I mean, yeah, I forget what it was called, but the point was it was a Christian salesman approach. And basically you would talk to these guys and like, man, I led 37 people to Jesus this week. And it's like, did you? Or did you just get 37 people to pray with you so you would go away and stop annoying them? I don't know. And they're just cutting up little... And the other thing I said is, are you sure you led them to Jesus? Or was it their grandmother who'd been praying for them for 25 years?
Right.
It's like Paul said that we all... And so when I was a young pastor, I felt so guilty that I didn't have the giftings that somebody else had because I wasn't doing it right. I'm not an evangelist. We talked about I'm not a healer. I'm not an evangelist either. Evangelism, to me, is so difficult. And it's kind of like I'm an encourager, I'm kind of analytical, so I'm pretty good at, reading the Bible and understanding it. And I'm a teacher, and I can impart that to people. Yeah. Those are my gifts, and I've learned to be happy that those are my gifts. I don't need those other gifts, and it's kind of like we also talk about spiritual gifts like the esoteric ones, like speaking in tongues or prophecy or anything like that. And it's like L.A. Marzulli talks a lot about walking in the gifts and how the gifts are like a toolbox that you just, I use this one when I need it, I use that one when I need it, I use this one when I need it. And it's like, that's kind of cool. I mean, I kind of like that imagery, but on the other hand, it's like, but there are some people who are specialists, like you could think of tools as skills in a way. And you could say, okay, this person is a skilled carpenter, that person is a skilled bricklayer, that person is a really skilled plumber. And you need all those guys to use their skills, but you do have people that built their own house, and they did all those things themselves.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I see that maybe there's room for the Marzulli idea in the kingdom. I also see how there's room for the specialist. I don't understand all of the skills. Like, I don't understand speaking in tongues. I had a lady, and they're like, well, you should pray for the interpretation. It's like, yeah, but I don't, but I did watch some research on it, and it was really interesting how when you're speaking in tongues, the parts of your brain that govern listening are activated. And I'm like, how can that be? You're actually saying something, but it's engaging the parts of the brain that cause you to listen. And so people are like, well, it's because you're listening to God when you're engaged in it. And it's like, okay, I'm not bashing somebody just because I don't understand their gift. And I grew up in a church where it was like, if you spoke in tongues, you might be thought of as being demon possessed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like,
well, the problem is,
but then I married a charismatic.
But the thing that I see here is that when you start talking about your gifts, when you're talking about what I'm going to do, what I can do, whether I am this or I am that,
yep,
it's still missing it.
It is
because God could do one thing in your life.
Yep.
Where you are praying for someone and they're healed. You don't then put a badge on your jacket.
Yeah, I'm a healer now.
That says I'm a healer.
Yeah.
I'm a healer, and I can do this anytime I want. No. It's for the kingdom, for the purpose. Your anointing has to do with what God's doing in your life at any time. To me, I think that there are all gifts and no gifts.
Yeah.
It is whatever God wants to do
at that moment.
We don't need to highlight the character in his story and say, look what I did in this chapter.
Yep.
No.
I've listened to a lot of Derek Prince because I love his voice, and I really like his teaching on fasting and on some of these spiritual disciplines.
Yeah.
But I was watching a video one time where he was doing a healing service, and he would take these people and he would move their leg one way, and he was like, now a lot of people have, this is a ailment that they don't know that they have, and a lot of people have one leg slightly shorter than the other. And I could
That's
tell
his
that
old-
what
yeah.
he was doing was garbage.
Yeah,
It was
that's,
fake.
That's an old one.
Yeah. And he did this thing, and then all of a sudden the person's like, oh, my legs are straight now. And I was like, oh, that...
It's usually the arms, too.
Yeah, the arms, he would do that too sometimes. And I was just like, can you be a godly man and do that kind of stuff? I don't know. That really just kind of hurt everything he ever talked about that I got anything out of. I was like, I just don't know if I can trust him. So a couple of years ago, I was talking to a guy who had actually known Derek Prince, and he said, oh yeah, I traveled around with him for a while. And he said every time he would do that, and he would do it every single service, he said,
Yeah.
I was like, that looks so phony. But he said you couldn't really ask him about it. You know, he said he wasn't approachable like that. And I was just like, he said I wasn't sure if he was convinced that it actually was working. And like maybe he learned it from somebody and then he was like, oh, it really works. You know?
Yeah.
Or if he was just a con man. But he said when you're with him, he said the guy seemed like he really genuinely loved the Lord. And so I look at that and I'm like, you don't need to manufacture a miracle. You know, it's like if God's going to do it, he's going to do it. And if he doesn't do it, there's a reason why he's not doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like sometimes he says yes and he heals the broken arm or the broken leg or whatever it happens to be. My dad got healed of prostate cancer. It was miraculous. And the guy should have died 12 years ago. He's still alive. He had stage 4 prostate cancer. The doctor was like, you got to get your affairs in order because this is not good. And doctors usually beat around the bush. They don't usually come out and tell you, oh yeah, you're probably going to die from this. You know, they always tell you, well, there's always hope. We got all these different therapies and we got all these different treatments. Mm-hmm. When the doctor's telling you, go home and get your stuff prepared, that's probably bad. And Dad came in the next time after we had been praying for him, and when they did the MRI was completely clear. And the doctor says, I don't know how to explain this. And Dad said, well, you know, let me tell you about my friend Jesus. And the doctor says, I don't believe in that. And my dad said, well, maybe you ought to give it some consideration.
You do now.
Because you're seeing the proof right there.
Here's what I would have liked Derek Prince or anybody else to do. You know, if someone was just kind of like, you know, in the feeding of the 5,000, it does not say the people were starving. Jesus said, you know, they are going to be hungry.
Yeah.
Let's get them something, right?
Yep.
Here's what I would like the Derek Princes and all those Todd Whites and those guys who are doing this. Instead of saying, I'm going to heal you or do it, you could point out and just say, look at the way your legs are. Look at the way your arms. Let's bring them together. God made you. God knows your body. If these are uneven, they could be even now. In other words, not to say, just to give all glory to God in giving something.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus, it says, people went to Jesus and he laid his hands on them, the children, and blessed them.
Yeah.
What did that even look like?
Who knows?
Did he say something? We don't know. But is blessing someone making contact and telling them about their God? Yes. That's what I want them to do. Instead of calling it healing, make the highway open that this is a continuance from here for you to draw close to God. Let me just show you about your body. Let me show you my hands are here to whatever it is. You know, I'm lining these up because you are, make it metaphorical, something. In other words, it's not magic.
Right.
It's a design and effort on your part to connect them with God. And if they did that, I'd be elated. I'd be like, wow, that's the way to do it.
This is what I think happens. I think when you've had success,
it's supply and demand is what these people want. That they want.
Well, yeah,
they make the demand, so they make the supply. Yeah,
I think what happens is you you get a reputation as somebody who, hey man, when he prays for me, God comes and he heals me. And after a while, you're like, oh, hey man, I must be a healer. I can do this. I'll get out there and heal this person. And then after a while, you're like, I prayed, nobody got healed at this service. And then you go to another service, well, nobody got healed at this service. And then the temptation sets in to, well, we got to manufacture, we got to do something more. This revival's got to be successful. And it's like, no, it doesn't. That's the problem right there. No, the revival does not have to be successful. If God wants it to be successful, it's going to be successful in spite of you. And there's so many times when I was just doing lousy at preaching, or I was doing lousy at playing music at church or something, and somebody came up with tears. Oh, that blessed me so much. And it's like, it happened
say the same thing.
Totally without me doing anything, because I felt like I was just fumbling along the whole time. Yep. And it's
my dad said the same thing.
Yeah.
He said because that was the worst sermon I ever preached, and people would come up and say, I needed that. But, you tied everything back to what we started with.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, like you said, went to this healing service, I didn't heal anybody. Another one didn't. So now I need to do something. Now I need to do something more.
True.
And when you're extending yourself above where you're supposed to be, and you start looking for things that are not God, in order to almost manufacture what God does, you are essentially saying what Lucifer said in, I think it's Isaiah, where he said, I will ascend.
Yeah.
I will. Because you're no longer giving praise to God like Lucifer was supposed to be doing. And he internalized it and became, I want this for myself.
And I think the pride goes before a fall. And it's like, even like the crappy week that I had, there's probably because last week, maybe I had too much pride and I was doing things in my own strength. And God said, no. We're going to pull the curtain back, let Satan come in and kick you a couple times. And then you can learn to be humble. And then I'm going to come back and bless you again. Trevor was telling me that last night. She said, every single time that you get some kind of a discipline from God and he allows Satan to come in and attack you, there usually comes a point where he shuts off the attack and then he gives you a blessing of some sort. Yeah. So you just need to be thankful. Thank him, yes, that you chose to discipline me, and thank you that you're going to give me some kind of a blessing in response, because I'm not going to fight it.
And I agree with the end part of that. What I wonder about is like what Paul said, because Paul listed, hey, I've been in poverty, I've been in this, I've been in this. So it could, instead of being that I'm supposed to be here and it dips down, maybe just this is what life is.
That's
true.
But
it's all about God, and so sometimes there's this, but God's still in control of it for His purposes, and there's a
that's true too. And it's like he's always playing, a long chess match. He's not thinking of the next move. He's thinking 30 moves ahead, and it's like, we're not able to play that game. I saw a video today. It was on Instagram. It was this 13-year-old. This was, I think, back in the 90s or the 80s, playing against a chess master, and the 13-year-old was like the super genius. He was so bored that he was getting up, walking around, watching other people's games because this guy was taking too long to make his move.
Oh, that's Bobby Fischer.
Maybe, it might have been.
I think it was Bobby Fischer.
And so this kid...
He used to do that.
Yeah, he comes back and he sits down and he, now he makes his move. And it was like, because the kid didn't care, it was really unnerving his opponent because he was so invested in the whole thing. And it's like, there's that song, Lord of the Dance. I think the Dubliners or the Chieftains or somebody sang it. And it's this idea of God, he's dancing, and he's leading this amazing dance that everybody gets to join in on, and we follow along, and it's like, that's really it. He's the one that's guiding the whole thing. We just have to be acceptant of it and say, well, I'm in your dance. You know?
Right. So that comes back to what we said at the beginning. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven are like these. Like what? Like little children. What are they? Very simple, dependent, and loving. I mean, when you are a child, you're dependently loving, and you accept, and you not only accept it, but you expect love in return. It's not, you're not larger than yourself. You're not, you're not existing on a self-reflective, prideful, narcissistic plane, generally, unless, but it's like it's supposed to be a very simple life.
That brings us back to the Nazis.
Yeah.
So look at their upbringing. I don't know about all of them, but let's just take Hitler for example. Here's a guy that early in life, his family falls apart. I don't remember if his dad died or they got divorced. I don't remember the story. But the point is, he's from some sort of a broken thing, and then the mom gets remarried to somebody that's mean to him.
Yep.
Then he goes from that, he leaves and joins World War
Art
I.
school.
Oh yeah, art school. But World War I kicks off, and then he goes off to fight in the trenches, and it's like all of sitting there in the trenches. I'm sure all your dreams are totally shattered. And his whole life is this life of I need more because I'm not getting what I need. And I'm not getting my needs met. And so I'm going to take what I can. And when he became in power, his entire thing was, from what I understand, Germany was never really unified until World War II. It was always kind of like independent states that weren't really under one umbrella. Yeah. And his first thing was, we're uniting everybody under this one umbrella because we're going to have unity. Yeah. Then it's like, well, that's not good enough, so let's take over Austria. They speak German. We'll take them over too. Oh, the Poles. The Poles kind of are. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, Baron von Richthofen in World War I was actually Polish, But it's like, well, let's take them over because that's part of our ancestral land too. And they just wanted more and more and more, the Rhineland, whatever, because they don't have enough. And it's like they have to feed the war, but they're having the war because they have this insatiable emptiness in them that they need more. They need to somehow plug that hole, and conquest is the way to do it. And doesn't everybody, like, especially you think about people in society, like men, conquest, I got to get this woman and that woman. I got to get this toy and that toy. I got to get this car and that car. I got to get, this house. Well, that's not good enough, so I want to get this other house. And it's an idea of conquest constantly because they don't have the need in their heart filled of, God is in there loving you. If you don't have God in you loving you, you're going to feel an empty need constantly.
Yeah. And you're going to go away from God.
Yeah.
Which goes into other destructive kinds of things, like we've been saying.
All right, gang. That was the Hidden Citadel, parts 1 and 2.
Woo!
That was a good one. And we will be back next time talking about other strange and weird things that hopefully you'll enjoy. And you guys have a great week. We'll see you next time.
The watchman replies, morning is coming, but night will soon return.